camera guy goes, "So what's that song in Return of the Jedi that the Ewoks sing?" And then Grant busts into the song. And it mortified Grant to find out that they used that footage when the show came out. It was him working, singing Yubnub from Return of the Jedi.
Fon, welcome to Try This at Home. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited. We are here to talk about a longtime friend of yours who's well-loved here on this podcast, and that is Grant Imahara. Before we get into the Mythbusters part of it, though, you knew Grant for a long time. I'd love to hear about how you first met.
Yeah, actually, it was we became pretty fast friends. We both got hired on the same project on the same week at Industrial Light and Magic in the model shop. Of course, both of us were really honored to be there and super thrilled. And the first job we had was wiring 400 miniature lights underneath the set that was only maybe 3 feet tall. And so we were just laying there under the set on our backs, wiring hundreds of these lights, giving us the perfect opportunity to get to know each other.
That's a good way to make friends.
Yeah, so we're underneath this set wiring these lights, and we were just like, "Oh, so where'd you go to school? You know, how many siblings do you have? You know?" And then pretty much from that day forward, we were really good friends. We had a lot of hobbies and things in common outside of work, in addition to doing stuff at work. Yeah, we even moved to Los Angeles around the same time where I am now.
How long were you guys together at ILM?
Let's see. I'm not sure when he went to Mythbusters, but I was there for 10 years, and he split just a couple years before I did to join Mythbusters.
Very cool.
And then, of course, we still kept in touch. We still, obviously, we still worked on Battlebots and things like that. So, and he used to come over. I had Fonco Studios was Fonco Creative Services in Marin up in Northern California for a long time, and he used to come by the studio there and work on personal projects. So we'd build our R2-D2s on the weekends, or I had a laser cutter. I had a lot of the tools and stuff that they had in Industrial Light and Magic, and they sold off that division. So even after they were gone, Grant and I would hang out and work in my shop.
Oh, that's so cool. When you guys were working together, whether it was ILM or later, was there a certain type of project or a problem that needed to be solved that you'd look at and go, that's a Grant thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it makes me sad sometimes because I think of those still to this day. He had his workspace, his shop was inside of Fonco Studios here in Los Angeles. So whenever I had any kind of sophisticated electronics or mostly electronics, some mechanical things or machining, he would often do those for us here at the studio. So and it was always great. It was something very comforting knowing that you'd run into these roadblocks and you just walk into the other room and there's Grant and you'd ask him questions about, you know, voltage or amps or ohms or whatever.
I know that was felt on Mythbusters. I read a quote the other day that Adam Savage said Grant was the only one who actually had a degree in the stuff we were doing.
Yeah, that was the same at ILM, and it was the same here at Fonco. I am self-taught. I never went to school for any of the stuff that we do. So whenever I needed someone with a formal education, that was always Grant. We used to joke that, I went to the Radio Shack School of Electronics, and he went to USC.
Even Radio Shack is several steps beyond me, so that's... You mentioned Battlebots there for a minute ago. I would love to talk about that. I was a huge Battlebots fan, and I remember Dead Blow, and to this day, it is one of the most terrifying looking devices I think I've ever seen. What are your memories of just that experience with Grant and just that show in general?
Weirdly, the first thing that pops into my head is not what you would expect. It's that Grant doesn't need to eat. The reason why is, okay, so I was working on Mouser Mecha Catbot, and he'd be working on Dead Blow, and we'd be in the ILM model shop just machining parts and working, and it was just like what we would do after we get off work at around 5, and we'd stay there until, 9 p.m. or so, working on our Battlebots for many years. And I would always get hungry, and I knew that it would take an hour for us to get food delivered. So I would start thinking about food like at 6, like an hour after we started working. And he'd go, well, nah, I'm fine. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not. He could seriously go the whole night and not eat a thing, and he would be fine. He just didn't have that like hunger that I would start to get, and I'd get hangry at him because I'm like, you might not be hungry, but I need to eat. And he's like, I'll eat if you eat. It was the whole dynamic. So that's the first thing I think about, weirdly. But no, I mean, Grant's robot, a lot of the robots, those things were terrifying. I do remember Grant was really thorough and very specific and very particular. The spacing of the screw, like everything that he did was very meticulous, thought out, and kind of in a specific engineered order and space. He did a lot of planning and math, and he was just very deliberate, I guess you would say, with every step of the process in creating his robot. I, however, came from the world of special effects instead of engineering. And in the world of special effects, it's got to look good enough for camera, and it's got to be done fast and cheap. Because that's all that special effects require.
Yeah.
Typically. There are those projects where you slow down. But for the most part, those are the projects that I would work on. So our working styles were pretty different. And the robots reflected that for sure.
On Battlebots, obviously, we also, one of the first places we met Jamie Heineman on the show, so I know that you were around those guys. Do you remember when you would have first heard about Mythbusters or the fact that show was even happening?
I think I heard about it when Adam left to go do the show. I'd been working with it. I actually met Jamie many years before I was at ILM at Colossal Pictures.
Wow.
Because M5 was kind of a spin-off from the old Colossal Pictures model shop. And Jamie started working for Colossal Pictures, and then he took over the model shop. When Colossal Pictures went out of business, I think that's when he launched M5. I could be wrong on that, but that's my understanding. Because by that point, I was already at ILM. But yeah, Adam just, I remember he was talking about it a little bit before, that he was going to meetings, because Adam and Grant and a bunch of us in the model shop used to hang out all the time. There was like a secret society of nerd fans. Because a lot of people within the industry at that time, a lot of the older people who like were the original creators of Star Wars didn't really always feel comfortable around fans, and so you were very conscious of that, and you didn't want to make them uncomfortable. So you kind of just, I'm here to work, I'm here to be professional, I'm not here to nerd out on the fact that I'm working on Star Wars or anything like that. So there was always that. But then like people like Adam, Grant, and some of my other friends there, we would go out to lunch and then we would nerd out, talk about all the cool shit we're doing on Star Wars and everything else. So Adam and I were talking about him going to see Jamie and having some of these meetings pre-show. So.
What did you think about the show when it first came out? Were you watching it when it came out?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. From ILM, we were all very excited, of course, for Adam and Jamie, so we were excited to see the show. We saw the show; it was great, but it was weirdly not as entertaining for us as it probably was the general public.
Yeah.
Scott McNamara, one of the machinists at ILM, kind of said it best. He said that he felt like he needed to fill out a time card after watching the show. Because there's so many parallels between what they're doing on Mythbusters and what we do in special effects that it did really feel like, we're watching the process of what we do every day. And we're watching all the use of the same tools, and so there's not as much fascination with that aspect of it because we do all that all the time. So,
and it's the same people even. It's like you're just at work.
Yeah. And the same banter. What I always thought was really cool about Tori, Carrie, Grant, Adam, and Jamie is knowing them personally outside of the show, and then seeing them on the show. There wasn't really a big difference in who they are on camera than they are off camera. You know, some people will choose to be a different personality or persona on camera than they are in reality, but that show really, really did bring through the best qualities of those guys.
Those characters and the way they came through on the show, when we had Adam on, we talked about that, you know, he said that for a while there was some notion of, okay, do we need to produce this like a reality show? We need to tell one guy one thing and one guy something else. But the thing was, you didn't need to.
No.
Those guys, just who they are. I mean, it came through even just having a conversation with Adam. You're like, yeah, that's the guy. It's like everything that you want to see is there.
Yep.
And when they started to add the build team, which is what Grant initially joins before they fully dubbed them the Mythbusters and all that kind of stuff, it's interesting because it seems like kind of a risk. The show's a success. You're bringing on multiple new personalities who are kind of mostly untested. Obviously, Grant had been on TV with Battlebots a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about when Grant was leaving to go to Mythbusters, kind of what his thought process was or how he got involved?
I remember that they had auditions, and there were actually a number of people from ILM that went to the auditions. They're mostly people who had really good personalities for camera, but also had to have skills that bring something different to the table. You know, than Adam and Jamie. They wanted to have that diversity. And yeah, I remember him going down. I remember other people and people talking about it and joking about murdering each other or whatever. Yeah, he was pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
It was really something that he wanted to do. So.
One of the great things about Mythbusters is that it took those behind the scenes people and put them front and center.
Yeah.
You know, the model makers, the special effects artists, all the people that you didn't typically see. That's also, not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody can go to being number one on the call sheet from being behind the camera. Like that, for some people, that'd be a heck of an adjustment. Grant seemed to take to it beautifully. I mean, it seemed very natural for him.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people who were on the show are just natural showmen. You know, he used to do improv theater.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like he was Adam, I think the entire cast actually was they were all outgoing people who were just, like I said, they were like that all the time. They're always on, you know.
Yeah.
They're always joking around. They always have a lot of personality, and they were able to just bring that to the camera. I think that was the beauty of the show. Like you said, it wasn't produced. It was just them.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's one of the best things they did with the cast of that show is just choosing people who are naturally entertaining.
Yeah. One of Grant's real gifts on the show, I mean, he becomes the robot guy, and they always go to him when there's something complex to build. But one of the things that I always remember about him was his ability to communicate whatever they were doing. He was doing these incredibly complex things with, you know, robots and all the electrical work and all these things. And he could describe it on camera in a way that you almost felt like you understood it like he did. Mm-hmm. That seemed like a real gift that he had. Was that the same off camera and in his work as well?
Yeah, I think part of that is the culture of our industry. You know, it's very collaborative. And, you know, we looked at ILM as a brain trust of people. So you were always really well supported by the people around you. You always knew that if you ran into something that you didn't know how to do or a process that you weren't as familiar with, there was someone around who could back you up or help you out. And so we would constantly be talking to each other and trading notes as part of the work. But in addition to that, Grant used to mentor high school kids over in Richmond for the first robotics thing. So I think there was a certain part of him that was kind of a natural mentor that was part of his personality. But he, you know, like I said, we did that at work, and he did that, you know, outside of work, and you know that was just part of his personality. He was a very giving person. Yeah. Yeah. Even here, like socially, I could think of just dozens of times that I would see people here at the studio that were coming by because Grant was helping them on a project.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was just the way he was. He was very available for people. So I'm sure that came across as, you know, in the way that he communicates on camera is probably similar to the way he communicates with people who might not do what he does every day.
Yeah. I know for the reasons you mentioned, you may not have watched every episode of Mythbusters, but over the years, it's hard not through osmosis to see many clips. Did you have any favorite Grant moments or clips that you saw and were like, yeah, that's him?
Oh, pretty much all of it. Like I said, they were so natural on the show. I did like it when they would get into costume, like they did a Star Wars episode, Mythbusters episode. I thought that was great. Part of that is because I knew outside of Mythbusters, this is for Adam and Grant, both of them like to cosplay and go to conventions and dress in costumes and stuff. So it was always fun to see that part of them on the show.
Yeah.
Um,
He was a
that,
C-3PO, right? For Lucasfilm?
yeah, for some of the commercials and stuff that they did, and he did do just a tiny bit on the prequels.
Wow. Wow. Well, maybe that's why he's not eating. He's got to be in the C-3PO costume all day.
Yeah, well, there was that too. He would. I can't remember what I think it was called. Ensure the little drinks for.
Yeah. Like
yeah,
nutrition drinks?
You could tell when he was going to do C-3PO soon because he would be drinking those instead of eating.
Oh, my God.
Because he would have to lose just a little bit of that weight to get in the costume.
I've always heard that the C-3PO actors had a contract to stay a certain weight or to be able to fit the costume. I don't know if that's true, but that was always a rumor that went around.
Yeah, I don't know if they had to put it in the contract because if you didn't fit in the costume, you couldn't play C-3PO.
True. True. I guess they just don't want you showing up and sticking out of the costume on the day.
Yeah. I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
You couldn't fit if you didn't.
Well,
I had actually tried the costume on once. There was a situation where Grant wasn't available, and they were like, I was much thinner than I am now. So I tried on the costume, and I fit all of it except for my butt. And I was trying so hard. And I remember Jillian, she was the head of the Star Wars archives, was there like, I'm like, I could do it. She's like, no, stop.
Don't break this costume. Oh, wow. Well, Grant was on Mythbusters until the 2014 season, and he went on to do a lot of incredible work after Mythbusters, which we'll talk about. But did you ever get any impressions from him in the years after anything, what that time on the show meant to him or how he felt about the legacy of that show? Because, I mean, it went on to be just this, pop culture icon in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I do know that that was definitely, I would say, peak moment in his career. Like, he really, really was immersed in it. He loved it more than any other job that he's ever had. Yeah, he was really kind of heartbroken. I remember more clearly how he felt after he left the show than when he was on the show. It just seemed very natural, and he was very happy.
Yeah.
And that's where he belonged,
Yeah.
And then when that started, when he left the show, I remember there was a contract where he couldn't talk about it for a year. And he was just very upset and kind of moping around. He couldn't,
oh, man.
Because it was part of the deal. I think he couldn't get onto another show either for that year because they couldn't announce that he was off of Mythbusters. So that year I remember being kind of a really bummer year for him.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't doing it anymore, but he couldn't tell anyone he wasn't doing it. And and he just was trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah. He was so synonymous with that show. I mean, you say the phrase Cary, Grant, and Tori has a cadence, right? It just, you say those three together when you mention the show. It's Adam and Jamie, Cary, Grant, and Tori. That's the, we've been for most of our series so far, we've been in the pre-build team days and not seeing them there. It was like this hole. It was just like, how did they ever make Mythbusters without this team? And so, yeah, he was half the show in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, they really fell onto a perfect formula once they brought them on.
Yeah.
And made them full Mythbusters. It was also just a lot of work for them. I remember Adam and Jamie just had a really hard time creating enough content for the show fast enough that they really needed to have that second team. To really keep the show engaging and really vibrant with entertainment and information.
You mentioned earlier that Grant actually, after in the I don't know if it was just post Mythbusters, that's hard to say, or even during the time, but had a shop at your studio. You mentioned this a little bit, but what was that like having him there day to day again?
Oh, it was great. I don't know. There was never a moment from, like I said, from the moment we worked together under that set forward all the way to recently. Sorry, this is sad.
Yeah.
But we were just really good friends. We were always around each other. We would see each other. It's funny. We would see each other at conventions and hang out. We'd laugh because we like hang out while we were in San Diego or Atlanta or whatever. So it was just seemed very natural and the way things should be.
Yeah.
I remember when I was thinking about moving to LA. I went to see him for coffee, and he had just given his keys up for his condo and moved down here. And I said, because I was doing a lot of work. There's a weird thing that happens in the film industry from the Bay Area where you rent and you stay in hotels when you do work down here. Then you start doing so much work, you realize it's going to be cheaper to just get an apartment. And then once you have an apartment, you start staying here more and more. And that's when I was talking to him. I was like, and I remember I met him for coffee and I said, hey, Grant, do you think, and I didn't even ask the question, he says, GTFO. I'm like, I haven't even asked you a question. He goes, I know what you're going to ask. GTFO, come on down. Move down here. So,
that's awesome.
I think that there might have even been some of that. He just felt responsible for getting me down here. So he had to I don't know. But yeah, when there was a space available at my studio, I definitely let him know, and he was very quick to jump in. And it just felt very natural because, like I said, we used to spend time after work working on our Battlebots, and it was just fun. We just had a lot of fun, just trading notes and working on different projects and spending the weekends building R2s and stuff like that. It was just a lot of fun. It was like a clubhouse almost. Studio space here.
There's a great video for folks listening. You can check it out. I think it's on the Tested channel where Adam comes and you guys do a tour of Grant's workshop there. And to your point earlier about his precision, it is such a view into how his mind worked. It looks like it's out of a sci-fi movie. It's so well designed and clean and everything else. Did you have a similar? You said you had a kind of a different sensibility at times. What was it like having that there?
Oh well, part of that was actually it was designed when they were launching on a White Rabbit project. He really wanted to coerce the production into like shooting in his space. Oh wow! Because one, it made sense that he would work in his space here at the studio, but also he really wanted, he just wanted everything that is in his tool set at his fingertips, and there's things like a Bridgeport mill that you would not take to a location or whatever, but it's very important when you're machining things and stuff like that. So. He still ended up working in that shop, but he actually dressed it up so it would be good on camera.
So that is the shop that's in White Rabbit Project then? No,
they decided to shoot in other locations and things like that. I can't remember if they ever did anything in his shop, but that was the original reason why it was so produced in a very art-directed way. That's cool. It just became his space, but it was definitely taken to that next level. Because he was trying, like there were LEDs behind the shelves, and he had 6 monitors at his desk, like Tony Stark.
That does make more sense that it was a set, because I was watching that video going like, yeah, this looks like he just got the bridge of the Enterprise, and that's where he's working.
Yeah. I think, I'm sure that played into it is like the storytelling of Grant's space. Yeah. But it was definitely the produced art-directed version of how he sees his space.
In that same...
to be fair, it's also not far off from what he would normally do. Yeah. Maybe minus the LEDs and maybe just having 2 monitors instead of 6.
In that same video, and I think you guys did another video on its own about it, but you talk about one of Grant's last projects. I wonder if you could tell our audience about the Baby Yoda project.
Oh, yeah, the little Grogu. Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. He was here with Lauren Markland, was one of the artists that had worked for Fonco for a little bit, and then she went off, I think, to work for Universal. But she used to come in and work with him on that project. It was pretty cool. Every time, that's one of the things that we would do is we'd walk into each other's shops and, what are you working on, kind of thing, And then we joke with each other like, why are you doing it that way? That actually is remnant from ILM. That's what the protocol for walking up and looking at other people's work. We always gave each other a hard time. It was just kind of the fun. But the Grogu was pretty cool. He basically, if you walked in there at any given moment while he was working on it, he had multiple 3D printed parts out, and you would see all the different iterations as he was going. So I got to see like the progress as it went, as well as he did a kind of an unveiling. He invited a bunch of friends over and invited me to go over to his shop there, and he showed off the completed version.
And the intention was to take to hospitals, right?
Yes, actually. Well, first, this is funny. First, he did the BB-8.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right? So he did a BB-8, and he saw the BB-8 roll out on stage like we all did when they were promoting Force Awakens, and everyone was like, "What? It's not CG, it's real." And Grant just a switch went off, and he's like, "I have to make one because that is just too cool." And so he made a BB-8, and his idea was he would take it to children's hospitals and hospitals for kids, and it would just be kind of like what the 501st does for charity and a lot of celebrities and stuff. And then he realized at a certain point he had made it, and we were rolling. He was driving it around Fonco actually, and he was like, it picked up so much dirt and just grime from production space that it was like it would get really dirty fast. And he realized that if he took that to a hospital, it would be rolling on the floor, picking up all these germs from the hospital, and then kids would run over and hug it.
Yeah.
So he had to come up with something different. He's like, well, and then when Grogu, when Mandalorian came out, he saw Grogu and he goes, that's it. That's what I'm going to make. And that's what I'll take to children's hospitals, and it won't be a germ collector.
That's very cool. Well, you spoke earlier about Grant's mentorship, and that plays in his desire to give back. And that, I mean, what's more emblematic of that than building something like that to take to children's hospitals? That's a real insight into who he was. Yeah.
I think that, and also just his mentoring the Richmond High School robotics team. That was not Richmond High School was an underserved school. It was not like, some kind of high-end private school. He was really trying to make a difference.
Well, that's a nice kind of segue to the foundation. I'd love you to tell the audience about the foundation, the work that you're doing, and how folks can get involved if they'd like to.
Yeah, the foundation was born of, just wanting to carry on his legacy and to dedicate something of substance and something that can live on to his memory. His mom and a bunch of friends of Grant Imahara, we all got together and we started the foundation, mostly driven by Carolyn, his mom. And the focus of the foundation is exactly the same focus that he had, minus his love of animals. But the foundation is basically set up to serve underserved communities and really kind of make an impact with people who don't have necessarily access to STEAM education or STEM education. It's been great. We've been around for many years. We've raised a lot of money. We've done scholarships. We're running a program called STEAM Stars. So that's a number of, I guess, us engineering STEAM education influencers.
Oh, cool.
I always laugh when I say the term, but I guess I'm in there somewhere. So people who use STEAM and STEM in their careers, we each have classes associated with our type of work, and we do a little video and stuff for schools to help motivate people to study STEAM, because and you'll notice if you look at the STEAM stars, it's a pretty diverse group of people in many differing fields. They're not all in entertainment or space or whatever. It's just to show how many points in careers that are actually affected or use STEAM and all the different parts of that type of education, and to get people excited about it, so that you can study that and then it'll lead to a career that you might actually enjoy.
Yeah. We're going to put the link to the foundation in the description for this episode so folks can go find out more and donate if they'd like to. When you're talking to somebody, though, maybe they, I'm sure we have listeners who watch Mythbusters and thought, oh man, I would love to do this kind of stuff. What do you tell people if they're wanting to pursue that kind of career, where to start or what the first step is?
I would just say you just got to do it. Just start. We live in a really incredible day and age that we have things like Steam Stars. We do bot battles, and that's just the foundation. And then, there's such an emphasis on STEM and STEAM education. There is a multitude of creators on YouTube that are all sharing their techniques. You have things like the Stan Winston School in Noman, so you can learn a lot of really niche types of artistry. So we're in this really rich kind of era of information that is available to young people, and so there's kind of less excuse to not pursue your dreams.
Yeah.
But I do always say, just do it. Just start doing it, and be willing to make mistakes. Be willing to do it badly, because that's what it's going to be like when you start. I do say if you're going to do it professionally, though, you should try to fail in private. That's my biggest piece of advice recently, because I realized, looking back at my career, that's what I've been doing. Because what I would do is, if I knew something was coming up at work that I'd have to do, I would go home and I would maybe I'd go to Grant's. And I would practice doing it so that when and I would familiarize myself with anything new in my own home shop or with my friends, so that when I went to work, it would look like I'd been doing it for years. I would have all my failures in private. So that's my little tip, my little secret to young people is try to fail in private. Then you don't have to be afraid of failure. You just do it on your own, and then you go to work and look like a pro.
I want to say for folks listening, if you're in the creative field for any amount of time, you will recognize that as sage advice. That is one of those things when you start your career, you're like, no, I want to know the techniques and I want to know this. And then I feel like the longer you go, you're just like, no, I need to organize my brain. That becomes the biggest part of this job.
Yeah, and making mistakes is important.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing it right, you're not making the same mistakes. You're always making new, different, more creative mistakes. But, I call those teachable moments, and then what happens is, as you're moving forward, as you're working on projects, you know where you've made mistakes before. Now you could foresee where something similar is going to be happening, and you could head it off, and you could start thinking ahead at how to avoid not just those same mistakes, but other mistakes based on these patterns that you learn from making mistakes. So it's all, I just call those teachable moments. When you mess something up, if you don't walk away from some lesson, then you have failed. Yeah. But it's not really a failure if you've learned something from it.
I think the work you guys are doing at the foundation is so exciting. Our audience knows this, but to tell you, for people who were inspired to get into creative careers or STEAM careers as a result of Mythbusters, I'm one of them. When I was a kid, my favorite show was Mythbusters, and my two favorite people were Grant Imahara and Adam Savage. Those are the two guys that every time they were on screen, I was glued to that TV. I loved everybody, but you always got your favorites, and
sure.
And so I went into the film and producing side, but it's as a result of watching that, and so that mentorship continues on, even if it's just through a screen. It is it is still having that impact.
You also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you can learn a lot from that show, not just about the field that they're in, but just about the camaraderie and problem solving and looking at the world with an analytical, scientific perspective. there's a lot you can glean from Mythbusters besides just cool stuff being built and tested, and blown up or whatever.
Absolutely. As we head into our close here, typically we do an outro on the show, but I thought what would be even better than that is to have you send us out with a Grant Imahara story, something that comes to mind, if there's one that you can tell.
I'm trying to, yeah, it's funny. The first one that comes to mind, I'm trying to think if that's something. I feel like he might have a sense of humor about it. But he might love to have the record set straight.
That's what we're here for. That's perfect.
No, there was a show called, it was like Garbage Wars or something, and they would go to a salvage yard, right?
Oh, I remember that.
Right?
Yeah.
I think I just butchered the name of the show, but that was actually the first time he had been on television. That was his first exposure. And I think it was the ILM Model Shop versus the Henson Creature Shop. And they had to build a giant mechanism out of trash from these salvage yards. And I think it was Junkyard Wars.
Junkyard Wars, that's right.
Pretty sure it was Junkyard Wars. Okay. Anyway, so he's on this show, and he had never been on camera before, and he didn't really kind of understand reality TV or anything like that. It was brand new. And there was a camera guy shooting him while he was working, and just kind of shooting the breeze. And he goes, "Don't mind me, I'm just shooting some B-roll of you working," And the guy says, and they're just making small talk while Grant's working, and he goes, the camera guy goes, "So what's that song that they were talking about Star Wars?" And he goes, "What's that song in Return of the Jedi that the Ewoks sing? What's up?" And then Grant busts into the song. And what he didn't know is that was the camera guy doing his job and trying to get some unique footage for the show. And it mortified Grant to find out that they used that footage when the show came out. It was him working, singing Yubnub from Return of the Jedi. And I remember after that came out, he and I were hanging out, and he goes, "Fon, this is an important lesson. You need to listen to me." He goes, "Never do anything on camera that you wouldn't want a million people to see." And I was like, that's really good advice. That's solid.
That is wise.
He learned that the hard way. But I'm sure that played into how he presented himself on Mythbusters and other shows moving forward. And I have to tell you, I will remember that forever. And it definitely plays into how I approach on-camera work myself. And also advice for other people.
Yeah. Well, and from a fan perspective, I can't think of many things more fitting than Grant Imahara singing Yubnub while building a trash robot. I think
much later, as his success grew, he would no longer be so embarrassed by that and actually find it funny.
Yeah.
But I remember he really, really was bothered by that. And I think that what he was bothered by is maybe not necessarily singing Yubnub in front of everyone on TV, so much as that the cameraman clearly had manipulated him.
Yeah.
To do that. And that's not what and so, but he remembers this. And if someone asked him to do something, he would just think about that and go, "I'm not going to do that." Or he would just do it. But the thought process was there for every camera moment moving forward.
Well, Fon, thank you so much for coming on, talking with us about the foundation and about Grant. We are so excited. We have just entered on our show the Grant era, and so we have so much ahead of us, and we're very excited to get to see the show that we remember and love come to its full force. So, as I said, we're going to put the link to the foundation in the show notes for this episode so folks can go and get involved. But thanks so much for your time and for being with me today.
Oh, thank you. It was my honor.